Hello, welcome back to the Dojo of Gain. Today we're going to discuss what is probably the most controversial subject of the Olympics thus far, although it shouldn't be. Actually, I think the Olympics is over, so I shouldn't say thus far, but there's worse things that happen in the Olympics, like a child R-word competing. But in order to distract us, they do have a big controversy, and this is men fighting women in boxing and the supposed male fighter Imane Khalif. Now, I'm going to give my opinion based on the evidence that I've seen, but we do have a video from Derek from More Plates, More Dates that I'm going to react to in a second that will probably go into the science. I mean, Derek usually goes deep into the science and then we could make a more educated opinion, but for now, I would say that according to what I've heard, Imane Khalif is a natural-born female, but she has higher testosterone levels than a normal female. So the question is, should she be allowed to compete with females considering that her natural levels, her androgen receptors are more active than a normal female? She has masculinized features. This gives her a genetic advantage that is unfair. Do I think it's necessarily bad that it's a genetic advantage that's unfair? Personally, I don't think it's a bad thing if she actually is a genetic born female, which it seems that she is. Considering the country she comes from, it's illegal to transition. They don't really have an LGBT community. So let's give an example. Mike Tyson, when he was 14 years old, if you look at him compared to your average 14-year-old man, he's obviously on a completely different level. He has a huge genetic advantage over normal people, but it's completely fair for him to compete because that is his natural genetic advantage, and that basically is what makes an athlete elite, is that they have a genetic advantage over other people. That's the purpose of sports, is to see who comes out on top, right? And if she has a genetic advantage, but it's her natural genetic advantage, then I would say it's fair, because there are men who have natural testosterone levels of 300. There are men who have natural testosterone levels of 1500. Obviously, that's a genetic outlier. Not many men will have that, but that's an advantage that's fair because it's their natural advantage. If I had a testosterone level of 2000, I wouldn't suppress my testosterone to go and compete if that was my natural level. If I could pick up a car over my head, I would still go and compete against other men because that's my natural advantage. So therefore, me winning is fair. Is it fair to the people that don't have that genetic advantage? No, but that's just how it goes. There's genetic advantages in everything. Just think about Elon Musk. He has a higher IQ than an average person. Should he not be allowed to compete in the job market because it's unfair to somebody with an average IQ? We could go on with things being unfair over and over again, but she's a natural-born female, but she's stronger than other females, which she doesn't seem to be as strong as a man. So the thing is, if she was natural-born female, then it's cool, it's good. She's stronger than the other ones. Too bad they don't have that genetic advantage. That's how sports work. Like, runners have super long legs. If you don't have super long legs, you're not going to be a runner. It's genetic advantages all around. But let's see what Derek has to say. I bet she's vacuuming now.
It seems like the Imane situation has gotten a lot bigger, though, in that...
Yeah, I've heard this as well, that they failed, that they have XY chromosome, but I've also heard that these tests aren't accurate, so I'm kind of in the middle ground here. What's going on?
The fact that they have a pretty similar situation, they both be disqualified for the same thing. Imane had one of, I forget what round it was, but one of the opponents basically quit mid-match because she claims she has never been hit that hard in her life. So in the middle of the Olympics, literally just throwing in the towel mid-fight because you've never been hit.
Okay, so if she is a natural born female and that happened, that's perfectly fine. That's actually happened in some of Mike Tyson's fights. People have quit from never being hit that hard. That's like the same thing. He is basically like superhuman compared to the average man. So if they have the same genetic anomaly, but it's in female, I don't see what the difference is.
That hard. And then this individual comes out shortly after that they've failed a gender verification test and they've been disqualified within the last year from competing. The internet went absolutely haywire, and objectively, both of these individuals, Lynn and Imane, look more masculine than most females. And we can say with relative certainty that most people would agree that they look a little bit more masculine than the average female. So all of these factors together, it's a shitstorm. So Imane and Lynn, as far as I know, have never identified as transgender or intersex, but they failed a gender eligibility test at the 2023 World Championships according to the International Boxing Association, IBA, leading to disqualification. And another test was conducted by the IBA to reconfirm the findings of the first test, which it did, according to the June 2023 letter the IBA sent to the IOC, which is the Olympic Committee. So the IBA issued an official statement asserting that the women did not meet the required necessary eligibility criteria that were found to have competitive advantages over other female competitors. However, the IBA, which organized the World Championships but is no longer involved with the Olympics, would not initially reveal why they failed their tests, what was the criteria they did not meet. At a press conference, literally within the last week, on August 5th, the IBA, which no longer oversees Olympic boxing, apparently, for concerns about its integrity and its links to Russia and some other stuff, take from that what you will, finally clarified that Khalif and Lynn's test results revealed chromosomes that made them ineligible to compete in the women's category. So the results summary were abnormal, and the interpretation was chromosomal analysis reveals male karyotype, and they both had the same results. So a male karyotype means the general appearance of an individual's complete set of chromosomes is that of a male. This can be assessed photographically. You can see a depiction of the XY chromosomes through lab test results, and this is supposedly what happened. This is a quote: "The problem was not with the level of Khalif's testosterone, because that can be adjusted nowadays, but with the result of the gender test, which clearly revealed that the Algerian boxer is biologically male." This is apparently a total of 5 boxers have been examined, including.
Okay, so if this test actually is legit, and she's biologically male, or she's he, this person was born with female genitalia, this person was raised as a female. There's a lot of stuff that this person would be going through that would be shocking. Maybe they're in denial, maybe they're going through depression, maybe they're suffering. So the bullying, I would say, is unwarranted, but at the same time, yes, it would be completely unfair that they compete with females if they are actually male. The thing that's weird about this syndrome is that I've heard some sources say that they could actually be female but have male chromosomes. I don't know how that would work. As far as they having female neurology, a female brain, would that be a possibility to have that with male chromosomes, or does it not work like that? I'm not a doctor, but we'll see if he gets into this. I'll probably skip ahead in a little bit. So that's basically difficult right there. Is their syndrome is intersex, supposedly, right? Because they say that these tests aren't necessarily accurate, but that's their syndrome. Still being intersex, you're either male or female, you still lean towards one way or the other. You can either be artificially inseminated and carry a baby, or you could impregnate someone. And I would say if you have the capacity to impregnate someone, you're male. If you can carry a baby, you're female. There's nothing more male or female than that. So that would be a good question to answer. Yeah, keep it there. But another thing that people could realize, that this person's telling the truth, that they're not trans. You just look at the way that Imane Khalif dresses very masculine, keeps their hair short. Someone who's trans would essentially be a caricature of a woman. They would be hyper feminine, wear a lot of makeup, heels. They're like, that's not true, that's just a stereotype. Trans people are generally characterizations of women. I mean, they're not really women, so they would do what they think a woman would do He talks super feminine, like, oh my god, how are you? Or just be like Bruce Jenner, who doesn't care and talks with his regular man voice. I don't know. But either way, there's still that caricature, that makeup, the classic woman caricature. That's what they usually go for.
Believed by the IBA, all of them were indeed men. So Umar Kremlev, the IBA's president, then claimed that Khalif and Lynn's test results showed very high levels of testosterone. Now, it's been unclear if blood test was actually conducted assessing testosterone levels for the purposes of assessing gender classification, but even if it wasn't, there's a lot of stuff being thrown out right now as to if this stuff actually happened. Testosterone levels should be analyzed regardless. This isn't like for gender verification purposes necessarily, but just straight up, any governing body should know if an athlete's testosterone levels look male or not via the biological passport data that they should otherwise be collecting via their WADA accredited steroidal module. So everybody in high-level sports, basically any athlete that is subject to drug testing would, under WADA guidelines, would have a WADA accredited biological passport that shows longitudinal data assessing their androgen levels and metabolites and the ratios of them, and absolute values for excretion patterns and whatnot. So everyone has their testosterone tested via the steroidal module of the biological passport. This is like the most basic of testing that should be collected among all athletes, so they should already have the answer as to if these individuals have male-looking testosterone levels or not. And as should the Olympics, the governing body should know this already. They just may not otherwise want to disclose. As far as exclusionary criteria, that technical and competition rules that apply to the IBA are obviously quite different than that of the IOC. Last year, these individuals couldn't compete at the World Championships because of these verification tests via chromosomal analysis, whereas in the Olympics, that is not happening, nor are they taking those tests into consideration whatsoever, and apparently neither are testosterone tests being done, or to the extent that they're not being considered for exclusionary criteria. So the IOC hasn't...
All right, let's skip ahead and see if there's any, and check if there's any timestamps here real quick. So where it gets to whether or not they are actually male or female.
Asked her basically learn of how her anatomy differs from the typical woman she is competing against and what implications that has.
Oops, my bad.
As did the public. Unfortunate for her that it was such a public, display of what's going on with her body. It's like very embarrassing. Just imagine the stress, especially when you're born a certain way. A certain way, you have no say in it. You would just, you could be living your entire life thinking you are just a normal, healthy, functioning, very, very muscular woman, and in reality, you have like a unique situation that is not really in parity and fairness to your female competitor. So let's get into it. So basically, prime example, she, gold medal athlete, a lot of scrutiny, very public situation, messy situation. She is a South African middle distance runner and winner of 2 Olympic gold medals and 3 world championships in the women's 800 meter. Following Samanya's victory at the 2009 World Championship, she was...
Oh, he's talking about a runner who had this situation that was similar in the past, and she got her medal stripped from her. But in that case, I would say that the runner is actually a he. So this runner is intersex, identifies as female, but I would say that this runner is actually a he because this runner has a child that was fathered by them. So if they're able to produce sperm, then I would consider them a he.
Undergo sex testing and cleared to return to competition the following year. The decision to perform this testing was pretty controversial. As far as I know, they weren't really doing this. Like in the 90s, they basically stopped testing for gender, which we'll get into shortly.
That's dumb.
A lot of controversy, and later reports disclosed that Samania has the intersex condition 5-alpha reductase 2 deficiency and male-level natural testosterone levels. Pretty startling discovery, especially if you had no idea, going your whole life thinking that, you're just uniquely advantaged. What you don't realize you have, what we're going to get into shortly, is internal testes. So in 2019, new
Yeah, that's the crazy thing that I thought about. Sorry for pausing it again. Is that so? This person, say Imane Khalif, is actually male, but she didn't know she was male, so it's a he, whatever. They are at the top, gold medalist, female. But if they are actually male, then they're not really that good because Imane would get destroyed in the men's category. Let's be honest.
World Athletics rules came into force for athletes like Semenya with certain disorders of sex development and DSDs requiring medications to suppress testosterone levels in order to participate in the 400 meter, 800 meter, and 1500 meter women's events. Semenya refused to undergo the treatment, which is now mandatory, and has filed a series of legal cases to restore her ability to compete without testosterone suppression, arguing that the rules are discriminatory. In March 2023, World Athletics made its rules for Semenya and other DSD athletes even more restrictive, requiring them to lower their test levels below a threshold of 72 nanograms per deciliter for 2 years before competing. So it's getting more and more strict depending on the event, as we'll see. Although Semenya was assigned female at birth, she has the intersex condition I mentioned, 5-alpha reductase 2 deficiency, and this condition only affects genetic males with XY chromosomes. Individuals with this deficiency have normal male internal structures that are not fully masculinized during the development of the reproductive system in the utero due to the low levels of DHT that would otherwise be produced via this enzyme that is absent in activity, essentially. And as a result, the external genitalia may appear ambiguous or female at birth. Caster Semenya has said that she was born with a vagina and internal undescended testes, but she has no uterus or fallopian tubes and does not menstruate.
Being born without a uterus, being born with internal testicles, those don't make you less a woman.
Yes, they do. They do. Unfortunately, they do. No uterus, not a woman. Well, not always, right? Because there's different genetic issues that can happen. I don't want to cover. I know there's always anomalies and everything, but the fact that he fathered a child means that it's a man, sperm man. So basically, essentially, what Derek's saying is that they're men with very low levels of DHT, the masculizing hormone of testosterone. Okay. Learning more.
Testes produce natural testosterone levels in the typical male range. Now, obviously, the problem there, for fairness, at least, a pretty highly debated situation, and nowadays highly relevant given the current situation. So now moving on to history of sex verification in the Olympics. How do they actually screen for this stuff back in the day, and how do they do it now, or do they? So the sex of an individual is usually determined by a pair of sex chromosomes. Typically, females have 2 of the same XX sex chromosomes. Males have 2 different kinds of sex chromosomes, XY. Y chromosome is responsible for triggering male development, and in the absence of the Y chromosome, the fetus will undergo female development. You've probably heard that we all start as females, and this is kind of what they're referring to. There are various rare exceptions, though, which is what makes this really, really complicated. So a single sex-determining region Y protein called SRY. Heard of this following situation? This SRY gene being present on the Y chromosome acts as a signal to set the developmental pathway towards masculinization, and mutations in this gene lead to a range of disorders of sex development with varying effects on an individual's phenotype and genotype. And one of the most controversial uses of this gene was as a means of sex verification in the Olympics under a system implemented by the IOC in 1992. So athletes with an SRY gene were not permitted to compete as females, although many of them might be assigned female at birth. They have this gene. You're essentially told, you're a man. You can't compete. Now, the 96 Summer Olympics, apparently, all the athletes in which this was detected were ruled false positives and were not disqualified. Specifically, 8 female participants out of a total of 3,387 at these games were found to have this gene. However, even though they have this gene...
Okay, so... No, let's listen.
After further investigation of their genetic conditions, all these athletes were verified as female and allowed to compete. So these athletes were found to have either partial or full androgen insensitivity despite having an SRY gene, making them externally phenotypically female. And in the late 90s, a number of relevant professional societies in the U.S. called to eliminate this gender verification, thought it was ineffective and seemingly unethical. Basically, it was eliminated by the 2000 Summer Olympics, and this was followed with the new implementation of hormone level cutoffs as a means of assessing, are you too male, essentially. Now, you can just imagine how this gets really complicated, because if you're somebody who, like, via an analysis have been determined that you were meant to go down a developmental pathway that is biologically male, but you otherwise have a mutation in the gene that encodes for 5-alpha reductase, where you have androgen receptor insensitivity, so you don't actually respond to the androgens to actually masculinize to whatever severity the androgen receptors are actually functional or dysfunctional. You have a spectrum of sexuality, essentially, whereby individuals may have partial viralization, complete lack of viralization, or otherwise totally female, essentially, with exception of like genetic makeup. It all is a spectrum, and that's what we're going to get into now, is the actual performance enhancing advantage. Is there one? So for Imane, Khalif, and Lynn, the situation seems cut and dry. If you have XY chromosomes and a functional SRY gene, which is what we can discern from the tests of the IBA, a lot of people are saying you shouldn't compete against women, full stop. So a lot of people will say, and I totally understand why they would conclude that. However, what muddies the waters on this is the huge difference in how different categories of DSDs and conditions can impact not just your synthesis capacity of androgens, how much you can actually make, are the testes actually functional, do you actually have them still? Because some of these individuals end up getting gonadectomies, and we're going to get into it all. But in addition, like baseline, it's anatomical infrastructure and the spectrum of how you respond to those hormones. So in the case of
okay, this is what I was thinking. It seems that Imane Khalif is stronger than the average female, obviously, but I don't think that Imane Khalif is as strong as the average male. That's the thing. It's kind of like in between. So where would be the fair place for this person to compete? But if this person is actually biologically male, XY chromosome, these tests are real, then unfortunately it would be unfair for Imane Khalif to compete in the female division, which would basically come to a life crisis, because this person sees himself as an elite athlete. They've spent their entire life training. They didn't know they had this condition. They come from a country that doesn't have this technology, to find out that they're actually not an elite level athlete. This is a human life. Like, this person suffering all this bullying, I think, is unnecessary. People very strongly on the internet, you're a man. But this person was born with a vagina. They have the right to their confusion. They were raised in a country that isn't aware of these things. So this is a difficult situation. This isn't like people who are actually men, like Blair White, I don't know his real name, or Bruce Jenner. They'll go ahead and say that's a woman. But somebody who actually has the right to this confusion, they'll be cruel with it. Doesn't really make sense.
Condition in question was specifically 5-alpha reductase deficiency. So let's get into that first, because I think this is the most ideal example of a situation in which an individual who otherwise is genetically on the path to becoming a man deviates from a deficiency in, a mutation in the gene that encodes for an enzyme that is responsible for the production of the main androgenic hormone that dictates male sexual differentiation and maturation in adolescence, but retains male advantages via their inherent testosterone. So this is like, on one side of the spectrum, a condition in which this individual probably, at least in my opinion, has a significant advantage, pending their testes are infrastructurally sound enough to produce male amount of hormones. And this is where, again, the imperfect testosterone test is absolutely not an ideal way to go about having exclusionary criteria or whatever when some of these individuals actually have.
Well, a little thing that's a little bit confusing to me is if they have testes that are inside the body, then their testes would be warm. So how would they be able to produce male level testosterone? If you simply go in a jacuzzi and heat up your testes, it drops your testosterone levels because they have to remain cool. That's why they hang. I don't think they would be as efficient, but let's keep going.
which we'll get into too. But first, let's get into this example because I think it's the most relevant to kind of set the stage here. So Castor, who asserts, it doesn't matter what I have, what I'm born with, I'm a female, it's fine, I'll make it be. So basically, Castor's situation is a deficiency in this 5-alpha reductase enzyme activity where, and this is literature backed, double check what I'm saying, basically genetic males with male gonads do not produce enough DHT because they have a mutation in the SRD5A2 gene. So this mutation prevents 5-alpha reductase from converting testosterone into DHT adequately. Dihydrotestosterone, the most androgenic hormone in the body, responsible for an array of things, but the most notable being sexual differentiation and maturation / masculinization. So depending on the severity of their deficiency, which notably is a spectrum, because again, this mutation in the gene, it's not just like completely lack the capacity to make DHT. Some individuals, they need to be diagnosed via a threshold ratio of testosterone to DHT or literal analysis of their genitalia. So males with 5-alpha reductase deficiency can be born with a genitalia that's not obviously male or female. It's ambiguous. In some cases, the genitalia appears female, or in other cases, they definitively have male genitalia, but it is unusually small, so micropenis, with the urethra open on the underside.
Yes, that's something that I've heard before researching this intersex stuff. People with micropenises are actually intersex. So you could re-look up your gender identity if you have a micropenis. Nah, you're still a man. You just have a deficiency. I'm just fucking around. But pausing it again. Sorry. But if this person is actually male, who wants to admit that they're a man without a penis? It's kind of a sucky situation.
Puberty, testosterone and DHT spike significantly. Now, in general, this would be when individuals undergo full-blown puberty and totally mature into adult men. So, circulating levels of total DHT are about 1/10 the concentration that of total testosterone, but local concentrations of DHT can be up to 10 times higher than testosterone in specific areas of the body to facilitate full maturation. We can get into the chemistry on that, some of the interesting tidbits. Highly tempted to do so, but I feel like we're going to derail the entire video. But basically, what you need to know is DHT is, in bioassays, equivalent to 2.5 to 10-fold more potent than testosterone at the androgen receptor. It's so androgenic that even though it is, present at least systemically, obviously tissue-specific is different, like overall concentrations of it in the body are a fraction of that of testosterone. It is still the primary hormone responsible for the development of secondary sex characteristics like deepening of the voice, development of facial hair, body hair, both the penis and scrotum, or it's at least significantly implicated in reaching full maturity, perhaps is a more accurate statement. So during puberty, men with deficiency in this enzyme do not develop much facial hair, body hair, notably no androgenic alopecia, and this is kind of the inception of some of these hair loss prevention drugs, which operate via this enzyme pathway. But anyways, they also have a small prostate. Many males with 5AR deficiency are actually raised as female until they hit puberty because they didn't have enough DHT to markedly differentiate themselves as males pre-puberty. So they were born, appeared to be female, and then when they hit puberty, all of a sudden the spike in testosterone makes it a bit more obvious that things are not classically female. Once they hit puberty and test levels spike, the penis and other androgen-supported structures start to enlarge, and still, without the DHT, you don't end up having full maturation. Your penis doesn't grow to full size like it would. Facial hair doesn't.
Yeah. All right. So this video is basically speculation as well. Also giving answers to if they do have the XY chromosome, what benefits they will have. Obviously, they will have benefits if they have male puberty. I mean, so then that would make them actually male, but it's not 100% confirmed that Imane Khalif has XY chromosome because there's plenty of sources saying that that's not an accurate test. What we need is more testing to be 100% sure, but if that is true, then yes, it's unfair. I agree. Another little side note is that if you are watching this and you're a teenager and you're obese, your DHT levels are going to be inadequate, and thus your penis will not grow to full size. So I suggest you lose weight before your puberty is done. Peace out, homies.